The old continent is adrift, caught in the cross-currents of a new global order. For decades, Europe stood as a bastion of stability, a testament to post-war prosperity and unity. But beneath the surface of its grand cathedrals and bustling capitals, a deep-seated fragility has taken hold. While the world's attention is fixed on the escalating rivalry between Washington and Beijing, a more subtle but equally consequential drama is unfolding across Europe. It's a story of waning influence, economic stagnation, and a continent becoming the chessboard for greater powers. And as the giants circle each other, a familiar opportunist on Europe's eastern flank. Russia sees a chance to reclaim its lost prestige and rewrite the rules of the game. To understand how Europe found itself in this precarious position, we have to look beyond the immediate headlines. This isn't just about one crisis or a single political misstep. It's a slow-burning erosion of the very foundations that supported the European project. Economically, the continent has struggled to regain the dynamism it once had. The lingering scars of the 2008 financial crisis and the subsequent sovereign debt crisis never fully healed. Countries across the Union, from the Mediterranean to the Baltic, have been grappling with sluggish growth, high unemployment, and a sense of economic malaise that has fueled popular discontent. The engine of the European economy, Germany, once a powerhouse of industrial might, is now facing its own set of challenges. An over-reliance on traditional manufacturing, difficult energy transition away from cheap Russian gas, and increasing competition from China have left its economic model looking vulnerable. When the core falters, the periphery feels the tremors. Politically, the story is one of fragmentation. The spirit of ever-closer union that animated figures like Schumann and Monet has given way to a resurgence of nationalism and populist skepticism. Brexit was the most dramatic symptom of this trend, but the disease runs deeper. Across the continent, political parties that question the value of the European Union, challenge its regulations, and advocate for a return to national sovereignty have gained significant ground. In Italy, France, Hungary, and beyond, these voices have reshaped the political landscape, making consensus building in Brussels an increasingly arduous task. This internal division paralyzes Europe's ability to act decisively on the world stage. When faced with external threats, whether it's a pandemic, an energy crisis, or a war on its doorstep, the 27 member states often struggle to speak with one voice, revealing a cacophony of competing national interests. Instead of a unified European position, its disunity is a signal of weakness, a clear message to both allies and adversaries that Europe is a continent divided against itself. Militarily, Europe's dependency has become starkly apparent. For over 70 years, the continent has outsourced a significant portion of its security to the United States through the NATO alliance. The peace dividend that followed the Cold War led to deep cuts in defense spending across most European nations. The assumption was that large-scale conventional warfare on the continent was a relic of the past. The war in Ukraine shattered that illusion. Suddenly, Europe was confronted with the brutal reality of its own military deficiencies. Ammunition stockpiles were found to be dangerously low, industrial capacity to produce new weapons was limited, and logistical coordination between nations was fraught with challenges. While nations like Poland and the Baltic states have been sounding the alarm for years, it took a full-scale invasion for the rest of the continent to awaken to the threat. This reliance on American military might creates a fundamental vulnerability. As the United States increasingly pivots its focus and resources towards the Indo-Pacific to counter China, questions about the long-term reliability of the American security guarantee have grown louder. A Europe unable to defend itself is a Europe unable to determine its own destiny. Into this landscape of European weakness step the two primary global competitors, the United States and China. For them, Europe is not just a collection of historic allies or trading partners, it is a critical arena in their great power competition. It represents a massive market of over 450 million consumers, a hub of technological innovation, and a block of votes in international institutions. Control or influence over Europe is a grand prize in the geopolitical contest of the 21st century. The United States, seeking to maintain its global leadership, is working to rally a transatlantic coalition to counter both Chinese economic practices and Russian aggression. Washington's strategy involves strengthening NATO, encouraging European defense spending, and pushing for a unified front on issues like technology standards, trade, and sanctions. The message from the White House is clear: the West must stand together against authoritarian challengers. This pressure places European leaders in a difficult position, often forcing them to choose sides in a rivalry they would rather avoid. China, on the other hand, employs a different strategy, one of economic statecraft and patient diplomacy. Beijing sees a divided and economically anxious Europe as an opportunity through its Belt and Road Initiative. It has invested billions in critical infrastructure across the continent, from the port of Piraeus in Greece to railways in Serbia. These investments, while often welcomed for the capital they provide, create economic dependencies that can be leveraged for political influence. China has also become an indispensable trading partner for many European nations, particularly Germany. This deep economic entanglement makes it incredibly difficult for Europe to take a hard line against Beijing. Even in the face of human rights abuses in Xinjiang or the crackdown on democracy in Hong Kong, China masterfully exploits the divisions within the EU, courting individual member states with promises of trade and investment, thereby preventing the formation of a unified European policy towards it. Europe thus becomes a battleground where American calls for ideological solidarity clash with Chinese offers of economic pragmatism. But while the US and China play their long game, another power, driven by a different set of ambitions, has seized the moment. For Vladimir Putin's Russia, European weakness is not a strategic variable. It is the primary objective. Moscow's worldview is shaped by a deep-seated sense of historical grievance and a desire to restore the sphere of influence it lost after the collapse of the Soviet Union. A strong, united, and expansive Europe, backed by the United States, is seen as a direct existential threat to Russia's security and its status as a great power. For years, Russia has worked to undermine European unity through a campaign of asymmetric warfare. This has included funding and supporting anti-EU political parties on both the far left and far right, launching sophisticated disinformation campaigns to sow social division, and using its energy resources as a tool of political coercion. The invasion of Ukraine was the ultimate expression of this strategy, brutal, high-stakes gamble to halt NATO's eastward expansion and shatter the post-Cold War security order. Putin wagered that a Europe addicted to his cheap gas and plagued by internal divisions would ultimately lack the resolve to mount a sustained and unified response. He miscalculated the initial strength of the Western reaction, but the long-term strategy remains. Russia is playing for time, believing that as the economic costs of the war and sanctions mount, European solidarity will begin to fracture. The energy crisis, inflation, and the sheer fatigue of a prolonged conflict are the weapons Russia is now counting on. Every protest against rising energy bills in a European capital, every political debate over the cost of supporting Ukraine is a victory for the Kremlin. Russia is the ultimate opportunist, turning Europe's self-doubt and internal quarrels into strategic assets. It cannot defeat Europe through sheer military or economic might, but it believes it can cause it to collapse from within. We are now witnessing the consequences of this tectonic shift. The continent is caught in a strategic triangle pulled in three different directions. The United States demands loyalty and a firm stance against its rivals. China offers economic partnership, but demands political acquiescence. Russia actively seeks to fracture the entire project. For Europe, the path of a third way of strategic autonomy is fraught with difficulty. It requires a level of political will, economic sacrifice, and military investment that has been absent for decades. The continent that once exported its models of governance and set global standards is now increasingly in a position where the rules are being dictated to it. Its future is being negotiated over its head in meetings held in Washington and Beijing. The decisions that will define the security and prosperity of millions of Europeans may not be made in Brussels, Berlin, or Paris, but in the halls of power of its competitors. The clock is ticking. As the world reorders itself around a new bipolar competition, Europe's position as a passive battleground is becoming untenable. The era of comfortable neutrality and reliance on others is over. The continent stands at a crossroads, facing a choice between managed decline into strategic irrelevance or a difficult and painful rebirth as a genuine geopolitical power. The ghosts of Europe's past, of division, conflict, and the struggle for power are stirring once more. The old world is fading, and as the new one struggles to be born, Europe finds itself caught in the middle, a prize to be won, a field to be fought over, its destiny hanging precariously in the balance. The great game has returned to its original board, and Europe is no longer just a player, it is the board itself.